thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're using this really as a launch for the Family Integrated Care Framework for Practice. We are very aware this is a busy time of year, so we're delighted you're here. We know it's particularly challenging at the moment with all the COVID absences and staffing shortages. So we're going to keep the afternoon short, snappy. We're going to have the presentations first, and then we're going to have plenty of time at the end, hopefully, for some questions and discussion. So we're going to start off with 3 talks. I'm going to just give a brief introduction to the framework for practice, and then Nadia Leek is going to talk from a parental perspective. And after that, Aniko Dirl is going to just share with us some information, some tips about how to start implementing a FICare bundle in your local unit. After that, we're going to move on to 4 presentations, basically from around the country, of FICare in practice. We're really excited about sharing these. I'm very much looking forward to them, but we will introduce them individually at the time. So I'm just going to kick off now by talking about the background to the framework for practice. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Judith Simpson. I'm a neonatologist in Glasgow. I sit in the BAPM Executive Committee, and I chaired the FICare working group. As you will all know as BAPM members, BAPM fulfills lots of different roles for the perinatal community, but one of the things that we do that is generally fed back as being one of the most useful things we do is to produce resources to support perinatal teams across the UK. The frameworks for practice are just one of the resources that we produce. Others include quality improvement toolkits and educational webinars. And I'm aware that a lot of the people listening to this will have been involved and will have helped with many of these. But as far as the framework for practices are concerned, these are produced by working groups, and the working groups are created from BAPM members. Usually when there's a new working group suggested, we put out an invite for applications for membership. And then we look at those who apply and we produce a working group from those applicants. We try as much as possible to have a diverse working group. We try to make sure that it's geographically diverse, that it reflects intensive care units, special care units, local neonatal units, that it's got membership from different members of the perinatal team. And we're very keen always to have the parent voice heard and to have parent representatives. It's probably worth mentioning at this stage that all of the work that's done by members of the working group is on a voluntary basis, and it can be a not insubstantial amount of work, so I think it's probably important to acknowledge that at this stage. So it was a way back, I think at the end of 2019, I think about December 2019, that we put out a call for applications to join the FICare working group. We were really lucky with those who applied, and these are the group members listed here. You can see that there were representatives from BLIS, parent representative, trainee representative. That's something that we feel very strongly about, that we should give doctors in training an opportunity to be part of these groups. It's really good for them and it's good for us to hear their views. Medical membership, nursing membership and work membership. And that's fairly reflective of the working groups in general, with slightly different slant depending on what we're doing. The actual process of producing a framework for practice is pretty well established and fairly formulaic, so it goes through a sort of set number of steps, really. We had our first meeting. It was actually a face-to-face meeting, which probably reflects how long ago it was. It was at the end of January 2020. I think we must have been one of the last face-to-face meetings before everything closed down. These meetings are now virtual, and there is a certain advantage in that. Actually, it's much more convenient once you get used to the virtual technology, which has taken me more time than probably many other people. And at that first meeting, you as a group, we came to a consensus about what we wanted the framework to look like. I'm not going to say too much more about that because Nadia is going to talk a little bit about that, and she does it much more eloquently than I can. It's not always an easy thing to do because you've got a group of people that often don't really know each other, who've come from quite different backgrounds. I mean, that's the beauty of it, but it's also a little bit challenging at times. So once you've worked out as a group what you want to try and aspire to, then jobs are delegated out, everybody takes a job, and we all went away. We worked on the bits that we were delegated, put them all back together, and then created a first draft of the framework, which got circulated. And then there was a process that was an iterative process, really, of refining, improving, redesigning in places the framework. And that was informed by virtual meetings, which happened about every 3 to 4 months, and in between email communication. Because FICare is fundamentally incredibly practical, we made a fairly conscious decision not to produce an enormous wordy tome that people wouldn't really read. So we wanted to reinforce what we were saying with practical examples. To start with, we pulled the practical examples from the units sort of represented by the working group members. We were aware that that might be perceived to be a little bit cliquey, and that wasn't our intention. The intention was very much to pull those together, but to have the opportunity to expand that out, and that's partly what today is all about. And once we got some examples, we circulated the final draft of the framework to the BAPM membership and out to other specific stakeholders as well. So with this one, we thought it was incredibly important to get the view of the psychologists. We thought it was important to really seek the view of allied health professionals who were perhaps a little underrepresented in the working group. So as well as the actual membership, we targeted stakeholders to give us some feedback as well. And this going out for consultation is a very standard part of creating a framework for practice for BAPM. Now, I have to be honest and say I don't think I particularly realised what an important aspect of producing the framework this consultation process is. The consultation and actually the feedback we got was invaluable. I think, you know, it was incredibly useful for actually producing the final document. I think we were also invested in the working group in the document, and we'd looked at it so much that you don't mean to be blinkered, but you do become a little bit blinkered by what you are doing because you're reinforcing it, and you can become a bit of an echo chamber. So actually putting it out, seeing it through other people's eyes, there were lots of incredibly useful things fed back. There were certain themes that were a little bit recurring, and there were other suggestions, really all of which were incredibly useful. So we're very, very grateful to that. And I think I speak for the working group as a whole when I say that one of the most productive meetings we had was the final one in response to this feedback, which really just, I think, allowed us to see the framework in a slightly new way. One of the things that was fed back quite repeatedly from the consultation process was around the fact that we had chosen to talk about 5 principles as opposed to perhaps the more traditional 4 pillars approach to to what's underlining family integrated care. Sorry, I've got an echo feedback there. And I think that made us reflect and perhaps just word things a little bit more effectively, because in essence, what we really aimed to do was to have 5 principles, but effectively for all sitting with partnership with families front and centre. And again, Nadia will just elaborate a little bit on this when she talks next. But I think on the back of the consultation process, we put this just a little bit more clearly and a bit more effectively. I hope that's what you as members feel anyway. And I'm just going to end here because others will be taking these discussions forward by saying a very big thank you. A thank you in particular to the working group members who gave a lot of time and a lot of energy to this framework for practice. I think FICare inspires people. You have very enthusiastic individuals involved with FICare, and that was very much reflected in the membership of the working group. I want to say a quick thank you also to the BAPM team, Kate, Marcus, and more recently Laura. They do an enormous amount of unseen work quietly behind the scenes, and without that, so many of the BAPM initiatives just really wouldn't happen. They're very good at chivvying along busy clinicians who get sidetracked by other things and just making sure that we stay focused. I'd like to say a thank you to the BAPM membership, in particular, those of you who took the time to read the framework for practice and to actually collate feedback and give us really constructive feedback. It was hugely appreciated, and I think it shows one of the benefits of BAPM. We're very much a big team. And then last, but absolutely not least, just a thank you to the families who continue to inspire us on a daily basis. And on that note, I think I will hand over now very appropriately to Nadia.
She said drive an even more rapid increase in infections.
Could people put themselves on mute where possible, please? Thank you. Are you seeing that all right, everyone?
Yes, Nadia.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Judith, for the introduction. My name is Nadia Leek, and I was the parent representative for the BAPM FICare framework. I've started off with this picture of Harrison and I skin to skin because this is what I'd hoped the framework would represent, that with the support, education, the right culture in the unit, people being enabled, parents being enabled, that we really could do everything we could to love and nurture our babies on the neonatal unit, not waiting for discharge, but really starting that bonding process as soon as possible. When we first met, it soon became apparent that this was going to be more than a framework, more than a document about how you do FICare. We talked about ethos, we talked about what it would feel like for parents, for the neonatal unit, to know that this was a FICare environment. And very much for myself, I felt that partnership with parents, between parents and the healthcare professionals, would be the basis, the real foundation for what family integrated care would look like on a neonatal unit. That partnership for me is born through our personal experience, and I'll touch on that a little bit shortly. But once that partnership is in place, that's where the rest can really flourish. We discussed that across the United Kingdom, various units were at various stages of family-centred care, and certainly many had taken big leaps into family integrated care. Now, for different units, this might look differently, but we did want to reflect in the framework that so much work had already been done. This wasn't going to override that. This was just going to give a step forward into family integrated care. And the other part that I really wanted to see highly represented in the framework was about culture, the culture of the neonatal unit. And again, back to our personal experience, it was differences in culture that really changed how we felt day to day on a neonatal unit. So I said I would talk a little bit more about partnership and why that was so important to me, and why I felt that it is the partnership between healthcare professionals and parents that would underpin family integrated care. So in our personal experience, we spent about 10 weeks on one neonatal unit. I went into labour in London, although we live up north, that's the Angel of the North. And this was a FICare rich environment. They had already, 9 years ago when we were in hospital, they had already made so many steps towards making sure that partnership was key in their unit, and that families really were integrated in the decision-making processes and in the care of their babies. And certainly I felt even then that we were primary caregivers to our child. When we moved 10 weeks later back up to the north, that wasn't the case. This was a family-centred unit for sure, but FICare wasn't as strong as we'd experienced in the first unit. And for my husband and I, we could say that our mental health suffered greatly just with that change. And one day my husband said to me, you know, what's happened to us? What's going on? And when we thought about it, it was simply the environment that we were in was so different. And some of our abilities as parents had been taken away. We weren't as involved in decision making. And I certainly didn't feel like a primary caregiver at that point. Martin and I both felt much greater levels of stress in this second unit. And it was a surprise to me, certainly, that the worst really was over. So in the first 10 weeks of our neonatal journey, our twin died, the smaller boy, and Harrison was at his worst when it came to his health. That second 10 weeks really was about him putting on weight, getting used to reducing the oxygen and hitting the other milestones that were required for him to come home. He was in a good place, and yet we as individuals felt worse, and it was simply because FICare hadn't been embedded there yet. And that brings me to this quote, which I love, that I know everybody is doing their absolute best for families every single day, and thank you for that. There is now, however, data, good evidence around family integrated care and the benefits to the whole family, the baby and the unit. And I would say that the framework really did acknowledge the fact that you as healthcare professionals are custodians of that environment. We know across the UK that family-centred care is very much a standard practice. In some places, however, FICare is still aspirational. So now that we're starting to know better, as per the quote, let's all try to do that little bit more towards FICare. The other part I said that for me was so important was culture. And again, another quote that I love, that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch and dinner. If the culture on your neonatal unit is right, the rest of the elements of FICare in the framework, the principles, will follow quite easily. If you know that you have a family integrated care unit, then everything else falls into place. And that really comes from the culture that is instilled. What will parents see when this culture is as it should be is that they won't worry who is in charge that day. Or, you know, if the FICare nurse isn't around, then the day I have with my child might not be as good as when somebody else is on shift. We still hear that now. So having that culture of family integrated care will, one, I think, help to embed the framework, but two, provide that consistency for families on a daily basis. And lastly, I would say the passion that I bring is obviously because of our experience, but it is just passion. You know, I'm trying my best to learn. It's yourselves as healthcare professionals that will do this work on a neonatal unit with your parent partners. And I would say you will all have the PAGs set up or working groups towards family integrated care. And the thing I found most daunting actually working within a working group is being the only parent. And sometimes it was quite hard to articulate myself and get my voice across simply because of my passion. It wasn't that everyone wasn't listening, they absolutely were. But it's just such a passion for me that I felt, am I saying this in a way that everyone's understanding? My only advice moving forward is within your units, if you've got one or two parents, maybe consider having a few more, a larger parent contingent to really give that voice the power that it needs. We've all seen that parents, once motivated to support a neonatal unit, can absolutely move mountains when it comes to family. I'd like to say that I've been so proud to be involved in the working group. It was hard work. I have a full-time job outside of this, but I'm so proud to be involved. And for me, knowing the importance personally of family integrated care, seeing the level of investment from NHS England, the Bliss Baby Charter everybody's working on, the BFI accreditation people are working towards, it really is a dream come true to see the level of focus put into family integrated care. So I will continue to shout. FICare will always be in my bonnet. Thank you for your attention. And I will just keep moving forward and supporting any way I can. So thank you.
That was brilliant, Nadia. Thank you so much. I think it's Aniko now. I'm just going to pass right over to Aniko and let her carry on.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's absolutely amazing to be here. I hope you are able to see my slides and you can hear me well.
Yeah, we can hear you really well and see your slides.
Amazing, thank you. So I can't really tell you how to implement FICare, but in this section, I will just try to give you a little bit of tips about how can you start the journey or that work in your own unit. I'm probably a very early adopter of FICare, and for many years, even before having my own children, I was very strongly advocating for this ethos in my own unit. And I thought I'm going to skip this slide, but we actually haven't touched base. What is the definition? And it's really that partnership, to build that partnership while the parents on the neonatal unit and achieving that primary caregiver, where really the majority of the care task will be delivered by parents, except of really the medical procedures or intravenous medications, is the essence what we are trying to achieve. And the goals what you will try to implement or work around in your unit to ensure that that partnership is established, that the parents feel real part of the neonatal team and not as outsiders, just be around, and that the parents are involved in the care as much as possible and you support them with education and skills and knowledge to do that. That the parents informed and understand all aspects of care, and that's probably needs materials about medical conditions or equipment or management, because once they are more informed, they will be able to more actively involved in the shared decision making, which again, a basis of the partnership. And we all suffered over the last nearly 2 years now, and I think FICare is more needed as ever. And I think this was a time when in some units, separation was seen as normalized by hospital infection prevention or control teams. Parents were stopped to come to the unit, and it highlighted, if you have read the BLISS or the EFCNI report, that how much damage separation actually can cause to parental mental health and babies' outcomes as well. It led to a global campaign of Parents Aren't Visitors, and I'm glad that at least in the UK, many units managed to re-establish unrestricted access for parents. And I think we all witnessed a lot of fears and emotional trauma, both by staff and parents, just having this virus around, which limited close and intimate relationship. And sometimes when you support a mom to express or skin to skin, this actually needs quite a close physical contact. So we have to work towards these normalities back. So you probably all know the framework now very well with the 5 key principles. And yes, we agreed that based on the original 4 Canadian pillars, those pillars were not highlighting the essence and the importance of partnership, and everything should be built around partnership. And that was this decision why we took this approach to the UK framework. So I'm just going to give a couple of tips how to start your journey, how to continue your work, which is probably already began in your units. And first you need to get your team and win the hearts. And you probably know in your team who going to be joining your journey, on this journey. You will find people who like to be champions. You will know who are really the advocates for families, who are drivers and who are doers, who will able to make those changes. So get those people together to a FICare core group. It's really important that you have a multidisciplinary representation, and every unit is different. I know that in some units, nurses are the ones who are driving FICare, and in particular in my units, it's the AHPs who are invaluable to pushing this kind of culture and training and all the aspects, elements of the care bundle. You can't really do this without senior medical leadership buy-in. So again, you have to have a multidisciplinary buy-in to continue on this journey. And something what you should not forget is really a veteran parent representation. So if you haven't had any way of getting feedback of parents who have been discharged and completed their journey in that unit, that's probably will be the first step to bring those into this work. And ideally, every material or everything what you provide for parents should be co-designed with parents. And certainly we learned a lot about those families who supported us in our journey And you very often don't realize some minor things which are important for parents as a healthcare professional. So again, it's essential that you have some veteran parents on board to ensure that you get these things right. Why do really we need a care bundle? And we were practicing an ethos for a long time, but we haven't had a care bundle implemented up until 2017. So it wasn't visible internally, and it also wasn't visible externally to other units, that we probably practiced few things slightly differently. It's also needed that you have a structured system for FICare, that your team is actually compliant and sharing these aims and values. And it's not an optional QI project when some of the team members can say, oh, I'm in or out of that. This has to be a shared value on the unit, what everybody practices in the same way. And I think it's really important for equity in care, because if you don't have this to offer for every parent in a structured, open way, then parents with low confidence, parents who may not be able to advocate for their child very strongly, parents who need more time with their skill acquisition or who have language barrier, may never be able to achieve that primary caregiver status because that resources are not visible and openly accessible for them. You have to build on your local foundation. We believe that in many neonatal units, you already have lots of things that you have embraced from the basic principles of FICare. And we know that units have a strong basis of family-centered care, and many units have completed or halfway through their Bliss Baby Charter accreditation. So have a look at your unit. What are the strengths and what elements you have already? And maybe benchmark yourself to these 5 key principles. We have designed a very brief staff care assessment, which could be a very easy team exercise that you sit down with your team, you have a look at the 5 pillars or key elements or key principles, and you try to establish where are you scoring green, amber, and red, what is really, really important to act on it, and what would be your actions. And then your unit actually can prioritize those actions agreed, depending what is really, really urgent. So just to give you an example how this could look like with pillar 2, with empowerment, you would want as an essential element probably for FICare ensure that there is some kind of orientation for parents, or also, what kind of parent educational program is available. And another one, that if you have any peer-to-peer learning available. And similarly, an example for pillar 5, you will have to look at your environment. Do you have, and have you managed to achieve unrestricted access for your parents? Many units now doing that with a fingerprint entry device as well, to ensure that the parents are not have to wait a long time at the doors. Have you looked at your courtside environment? Do you have comfortable reclining chairs where actually parents are able to do long skin-to-skin cuddles and so on? Another thing is, how do you want to plan your FICare journey? When do you start FICare with the parents? And the Canadian model originally, which was the RCT, they basically had FICare as a step-down care once the baby was going on special care in dedicated nurseries in Canada and those units who participated. And I think that maybe was correct for a research setting, but now with our understanding, this journey with FICare have to start probably antenatally if possible, if you have enough time to that, but certainly from the time of baby's birth, and their interaction and presence need to be there from the very first day. The parents have to understand that it's not just the excellence Medicare care, but their interaction and presence will improve outcomes, which is most importantly their parental mental health, potentially improve weight gain, very high chances of successful breastfeeding, and maybe a shorter length of stay in hospital. And if you start this journey while the baby is already, still receiving intensive care journey, you minimize the time period when they really feel lost and without a control, when their parental mental health really can suffer. Parents will need different time and speed in skill acquisition. So you may have parents who will be able to pick up skills and change a nappy during the first week when a baby still might be ventilated and on parental nutrition and on high level of care. And you may have parents who actually need more time for this and quite scared and need empowerment to actually just touch their babies. But I think FICare have to start antenatally or at the time of delivery. We put down in the framework that most of the changes can be achieved by low cost, but I think people have to recognize that some additional funding somewhere will need to be required. And the reason for this is probably because you probably will need some dedicated staff or staff time for FICare to run the education program and pull this whole thing a little bit together as a coordinator. And also actually to train your staff. And some of the environmental modifications to make your unit parent friendly certainly will cost some money. We were very lucky in our unit that for about 2 years from a charity grant, we had our FICare coordinators. And I really see the value, how it's supported the implementation. These were extra staff above our nurse establishment. And currently, when we struggle with our staffing numbers, we're really missing that time when we had somebody who was a senior nurse member with great communication skills, and provided continuity, consistency, and facilitation for the parents with great coaching skills. And those coordinators were kind of the face of the unit, having really, close contact with the parents on a daily basis, troubleshooting everything, and coordinating the parent education program. So you want to move on and try to design the elements of your care bundle what you want. And probably the 4 things what you will try to facilitate is parental presence and development of attachment. And you may create a culture about delivery room cuddle or long skin-to-skin contact, ensure that good psychosocial support is available. You may want to facilitate parental education. You may want to facilitate that the parents are able to learn this care task and, for example, to achieve their competency assessments. So again, you look into your unit and you can prioritize what is more important, but probably all these elements needs to be looked at to be successful in this area. And you will need to try to gain timely and up-to-date parental feedback about your work and how can you revise all these developments. You try to utilize existing resources. I think we have some amazing presentations coming up. You don't have to reinvent. You're free to take examples either from this webinar or from the framework itself. And in quality improvement, I think you can steal, you can copy, you can adopt. There is no licensing or copyrights, and collaborate, because you certainly probably find some pieces which are attractive or really work well in other units. And our resources and time is limited. So use whatever you think is useful in a different place. Try to take the network with you. In many networks, I think it's unlikely to be one care bundle. It's unlikely that all the units going to agree on one competency assessment document, but make sure that you improve the consistency and the continuity of the care across the network as the families are going through different units through the repatriation pathways. Ensure that their experience is seamless and integrated. Ensure that, for example, even if you have different competency assessments or booklets in one unit, they are recognized and transferred from one to another, so the parents will feel that there is continuation in their journey. And very lastly, I also wanted to talk about culture change. You can have the best care bundle elements, the best materials developed, but unless you have this culture deeply embedded in every single member of your neonatal unit, this is not going to work. And this needs to be communicated from top down, embraced on all level, and the people need to lead by example as much. It's very funny, we haven't shared slides, but I just put the same about culture change as Nadia. That it can affect everything unless you get this right. How can you make a culture change happen? You can get people to change if the change is easy, if it's attractive, if it's timely, if it feels social. If the alternative may be worse or unknown, or actually you try to disable the old ways of doing things. So maybe think about this when you try to work against the resistance. We have to appreciate that change is always emotional. And if you look at this process of transition, this is actually very similar to the Kubler-Ross grief cycle. So there are phases of change, and you have to appreciate that there is always resistance, and this has to be done together. You have to know your team and identify different people and assess what is their resistance to the change, and try to get actually those people who will be champions around, or maybe who has the least resistance against your work, to take it with you and take them out one by one, trying to drive them and ship them from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, to commitment, action, and positive perception. And this wasn't included in the framework, but I sometimes feel that for your neonatal team members, sometimes it is just not clear what is really FICare on the shop floor when we are down in a clinical shift with a family next to the incubator. And I think some of these values and behavior examples can help that. So I think in these columns, what you, for example, see in the expect to see is family-centered care. And what you would love to see is FICare in its best form. So just if you give you some example, for example, if we talk about how to welcome parents and families at courtside, clearly there is some behavior what you don't want to see in any neonatal unit. And then maybe expect to see that somebody who is smiling and introduces and make an eye contact. But then love to see, if you actually know the parent's name straight away as first name, you go out of that extra kind of step to feel they're welcome, that they feel that they are not just accepted to be at the courtside, but their presence is valued. Or for example, again, I wanted to give you another one about weighing your baby, a similar, we don't really want to see if the weighing is performed by the staff at time when it actually not known to the parents or in their absence and they're missing it. It is expected to see maybe that if this task is carried out with the parents present and participating, but it's probably will be a time when it's convenient to the nurses. And probably thriving FICare when would be if the parents can perform that task with the staff support safely when the parents wish so, and the staff will just help them to record that and carry that out safely. I'm very happy to share these, but I think particularly if you read Nadia's book, I think sometimes there is a couple of things in our verbal and non-verbal communication where neonatal healthcare professionals may not realize that that's not the best behavior what we are aspired to see. So in summary, I think I hope that the framework will motivate you to start your FICare journey or continue your FICare journey wherever you are, that you get your multidisciplinary core team together to drive these changes. It's advisable to use QI methodology, and there are plenty of resources in the BAPM documents to do that, and to acknowledge that a small change can have a big impact even in a short term. And let's just do this. Let's build FICare in every UK neonatal unit. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Anniko. You share your expertise and experience in such a user-friendly and accessible way. That was absolutely brilliant. This takes us on to the next part of the session, which is, we're all really excited about this. These are the examples that were submitted, and I have to say we were completely overwhelmed by the quantity and the quality, and the enthusiasm for FICare across the country just shone through. So it was incredibly difficult to narrow these down, but we're going to hear 4 today and host lots of others on the BAPM website. And we're going to start with Steve Breary from the Countess of Chester Hospital. I think we're going to be really all very envious at the end of this, because he's going to tell us about their lovely new neonatal unit designed with FICare in mind, and just a little bit about what they've got going on there. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Judith. I'll just try and share the screen. Can you see that now?
Yep, we can.
Oh, great. Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Breary. I'm one of the paediatricians in Chester, and many thanks for allowing me to talk today about the developments here. Now, I'm quite conscious that there's different pillars and principles of FICare, but I'll concentrate on the environment with the time that's limited. And we'll talk about our new unit, but just to say, you don't need a new unit to develop some of the things that we've developed in it. And actually, our inspiration was taken from a number of different places. One of the most notable actually being Exeter, where they've really incorporated FICare and were quite inspiring when we visited them actually. So many thanks for their contribution in helping us develop our unit. So so just a very brief background. We started fundraising in 2012 when it was approved by the Trust. So from the start, we had a family integrated fundraising effort which raised millions from the community, who were really supportive in helping raise the funds to start the building. That was the foundations going down in 2019. And that's the first baby coming into the new unit in July this year. You can see 9 years is a long time to wait for us to move in finally, but it did give us lots and lots of time for planning and for talking and to visiting other units. And in those 9 years, my awareness and knowledge and expertise in FICare grew, as did everybody else in the team. So we had a really enthusiastic practice development nurse, Jo Williams, who's now moved to a role within the network. Really sorry to see her go, but grateful that she's going to be helping the rest of the region in the same way that she's helped us. So we were going as far as we could with ethos and culture and all the other things that Aniko has talked about prior to the move in, but the new environment really did help us go that extra mile. So in November this year, we became the first unit in the Northwest network who are accredited with FICare, and I'm sure Sarah will talk about that maybe later. So these are the key things that I'd like to talk about briefly, and I've already talked about parent involvement, but parents were involved throughout the planning stages, and as well as the fundraising and the moving in. We got a very active parent group, the Dinky Divas, with multiple people being involved and being really supportive. I'm really grateful for that, and hopefully you'll see that effect in the pictures I show you. And as has already been mentioned, we're really keen to involve parents in care of the babies as soon as possible. So for intensive care and high dependency cots, that meant space for them. It meant parents being comfortable with some privacy and not feeling in the way, particularly sometimes. Who hasn't been on a ward round where a parent's been sitting there feeling that should she move back so that we can get access to the baby, and we really wanted to prevent all those things that I'm sure everybody's witnessed previously. As with junior doctors, it's unfair to expect parents to sleep in an uncomfortable chair near their baby if they want to be with their baby, and actually providing them with real beds and real comfortable beds next to babies in all care areas makes a massive difference, and just means that they're more likely to be there more of the time and provide more of the care for their babies. And that goes through to special care. Most people have got experience of big special care rooms with 8, 10 or more babies in them, and seeing parents sitting awkwardly next to their babies at certain times of day. And obviously we wanted to move well away from that. So space and privacy for parents to allow them to continue bonding with their children and providing care for their babies was really important. And I'll come to what we did about that in a short time. And having the equipment and the fridges and the mobile storage to move around with their babies was really important as well. We call it the comfort zone here in honour of a cafe that provided great support for mothers and babies that had to close during lockdown. But really a central area where parents can come out of their areas of privacy in special care and the other care areas and rest, socialise, be supported and be educated, we thought was really, really important. Central monitoring was something we were lucky enough to incorporate as well, which allowed us to be safe, but also for the clinical staff to take a little step back and allow parents more space with their babies. And caring for siblings and the rest of the families is really important too, as you all know. So these pictures were taken before we moved in. So needless to say, I would say the environment now is nicer. It's less clinical than some of these pictures are, but it will give you an idea of layout and the designs. So the first picture is an intensive care space, and the subtle difference from a number of units you'll notice is the incubators square on, so that the ventilator or respiratory support units are on the left side, the head side of the baby, and the facility for IV infusions and the like are on the right side. So that for most things, a nurse can approach the baby without a parent feeling like they're going to be in the way sitting on that side. And the other side of the incubator is really what we're treating as the parent zone, if you like. So that's the view from the other side of the incubator. So there's a comfortable chair, reclining chair, there's a drop-down bed, which we hope and have been told is very comfortable. And if kangaroo care is needed, then the dependents can be swung over with the ventilator or the CPAP machine or whatever it is to reach mum's bed or mum's chair, so that the baby can receive that care. And there's a degree of privacy for the parents, and it's away from the monitors that can be turned the other way as well, if that's what we want. So they're the ITU areas. For high dependency, similar principle, but just a little less intensive. Again, full-size drop-down beds next to every cot space, approaching from one side for the clinical team and allowing the parents lots of space with their babies. There's curtains around all the areas to provide further privacy if they need it. And special care rooms, again, the maximum special care room has 2 cot spaces in it, and we've got 2 single cot spaces as well with this amount of space. And it's really just wowed parents really and staff. And what you see, we haven't ordered it officially yet though, but parents spending far more time with their babies. And we have a central monitoring hub. You can just see out of focus the pictures there of the monitoring suite. So all the saturation monitors and other monitors from ITU come through to that desk. So nursing staff don't have to be right there all the time, particularly in the special care areas, and give some degree of reassurance for the staff. Yeah. And this is what we call a comfort zone. So you can see the screen there that we can provide education for sessions for the programme for parents. There's a coffee machine and a fridge there now underneath the coffee machine for drinks, food and sustenance. And this is a wonderful area actually to not only for the parents to come out and socialise with each other out of the special care areas, but also for staff to socialise with parents. The last time I was there, I had a crumpet and a cup of tea with one of the mums and talked about Gogglebox really, and just you know, to be at something at their level, and not particularly clinical really, just so that we're all on a par and all working together for the same purpose really. And it breaks down a few barriers for when we are having sort of more serious conversations about their baby's care, that they can see the human side of staff, and staff can see the human side of parents. And because we felt this is quite important, we popped it right in the middle of the neonatal unit. So you can see a floor plan there, and I've ringed the comfort zone right in the middle. Just to the right of that is the monitoring suite, and you can see the rooms for the babies around that, with the special care room, twin rooms on the right, and the HDU and ITU areas at the top. And we've got a retreat, so some people don't want to socialise all the time, particularly you know, if their baby's really sick, and sometimes people need a bit of time away. So this is a parent-only room with soft lighting, comfortable furniture, and some just getaway spots if they need it. There are rooms in the unit that I haven't described in the presentation, but these are the ones really focusing on FICare. We have a parents and family lounge with a play area for siblings. Siblings have just been allowed back into a neonatal unit after the COVID restrictions have been relaxed slightly. So that's the Dinky Divas Den, which is used for parent groups coming back as well, weekends and things, and supporting the staff and the current parents. The windows out for an outdoor area, which has got a large astroturf area to sit out at as well. We've got some funding approved to make that area better decked out basically for the future, but that's really important for the families as well. So we've still got work to do, as well as working on that outdoor area, focus groups as to how we can develop things further. We find that the culture and the ethos for the permanent staff is relatively easy now to sustain, but for junior medical staff in particular coming through, they're coming from environments that might not be quite so family integrated care orientated. So that needs a fairly continuous update and educational programme. And you know, there's an equity that was talked about earlier in terms of not separating parents from babies, and NNAP stipulates the need not to separate babies from children or term babies from their parents. But there's no real, there should be equity really about separating parents from their babies if they're born preterm as well. So I would really like some midwifery support for our mothers that are staying on the neonatal unit and being with their babies, so that we can take that step one further really to make sure that if at all possible, even when those mothers haven't quite been discharged from the postnatal ward, they can still stay with their babies. So I've rattled through that as quickly as I possibly can. Just a note really about the national guidance for what a neonatal unit should look like. There's BAPM guidance and there's the Department of Health HBN, both of which seem relatively out of date, talking about these sort of special care areas with just a chair next to the cot space. There's quotes in it which I can't imagine any parent might agree with, really, talking about a 6-cot room in intensive care, creating an intimate personal atmosphere. So apologies to anybody who might have been involved in writing that guidance if you're on the call, but I think it's probably overdue that both BAPM and the HBN need to update their guidance to ensure that FICare is integrated into new recommendations for new builds on neonatal units. So there's Jo on the right, who sadly is moving on to better things within the network. Thanks for all her work. We've noticed staff being so much calmer and so much happier working on the new unit, and calm staff and happier staff create calm parents and happier parents. The feedback we've got has been uniformly positive. And just a quick thanks as well to the team in Exeter, as well as everybody else that we spoke to prior to this project for their help. And actually taking our project manager there, Phil, on the left down to Exeter and seeing what they did down there actually allowed him to buy into the whole project as well and allow us to make changes which probably might not have been allowed otherwise. So thank you, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was fabulous. I mean, you're absolutely right that FICare should continue irrespective of the environment, but my goodness, it's inspiring to hear about an environment like that. I think that gives us all food for thought. Thank you so much. We're going to move on next to Sarah Fullwood, who's the lead care coordinator for the Northwest Neonatal Network. This was a network that provided a huge amount of feedback to the consultation process, all of which was incredibly useful. So I am delighted that they are going to come and she's going to share with us the FICare working as a network and how they've made this work for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah, and thank you to Steve. I've been to Chester. It is an amazing unit. And we're really proud to have that in the Northwest. So first of all, I'm going to hand you over to Karen Mannering, who's our lead nurse for our network, who actually started the family integrated care in the Northwest. So I'll hand over to Karen first. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, and so I'll kick off our talk by thinking about the fact that while I've been clinical as a neonatal nurse for over 20 years in various settings across NICUs and LNUs, it really was coming into the network and working with our parent advisory groups who had left neonatal care for over a year and hearing their reflections along the lines of what you can see on this slide that really helped us focus our need to think about family integrated care. Oops. So why did we take an ODN approach about it? Why was this the way to go? The short answer is we wanted to make a difference to as many people as possible, as many babies and families as possible. And networks are very much tasked with reducing variance and improving outcomes, both of which we know family integrated care does in a really successful way, and improving consistency of baby and family experience, along with we were very keen to make sure there was a FICare offer for every baby, every time in every neonatal unit across the Northwest. So how were we going to start? So of course we like a good special interest group in a network, so we were going to set a special interest group, but it was really important to make a real difference that we got the right people on that group. We needed to make sure that we were going to get collaboration, and anything that we produced at the end of it was going to be fit for purpose for all level of neonatal units. Clearly we needed parents in the room, so absolutely everything that we do and have done was in partnership with our parents, and it's co-designed. And as I say, they're just anything, if I don't mention parents, please just make an assumption that they were there with us every step of the journey. We had representation from all 22 neonatal units, medical, nursing staff and allied health professionals, and of course there's the ODN team. Our aim was very much about defining minimum standards while maintaining patient pathways and making sure that along the way, as already has been mentioned today, that it was really important that we could share learning with each other. No reinventing the wheel was necessary. And if people had generated resources, how can we use those to make sure that everybody got the benefit? And as I say, always thinking that this offer needed to be for every baby, every time in every neonatal unit across the Northwest. So we needed to come up with some agreed essential elements, because as we started talking, it was clear that FICare meant different things to different people. And for our families to move from one service to another service, what we were hearing from them, the difference, the variance in practice between one hospital to another is one of their real challenges. So we came up with essential elements across these 5 areas: passport, cares, developmental care. I'm sure you're loving my Wigan accent to everybody down south there. So developmental care, feeding and taking part in ward rounds. We did produce lots of resources within the network. There were train the trainer days, resources for neonatal units for teaching, none of which were mandatory, but they were meant as a helpful guide for people. In addition to that, there were project documents such as project initiation documents, risk assessments, etc., all to help people on the way. One of the things we felt was really key to reducing the variance is making sure that we're all using the same language. Our parents are saying, you might think you're saying the same things, but as parents, we're hearing something different. And it was really important to us then that we kind of unified that across the patch. So along with those essential elements of say, CARES, for instance, we produced a number of crib sheets that go through the aims, resources and learning points of every element that they're thinking about. So clearly this one is around giving medication. And how would we get the buy-in from staff to actually crack on and get this done? Well, on every sheet of a crib sheet, there is some statements around why this is important to families. So as staff are coming to the cot side to teach a parent about giving medication, something like this will prompt them to realise the value that they're bringing. This next one is just around hand expression. It's another way of showing you what the crib sheets look like. And again, some parent phrases, statements around the importance of that and what that means to them. We felt that these were really instrumental in helping staff to understand why they're doing it. We had nurses who were like, I'm years QIS, please don't tell me how to swaddle bath a baby and how to tell a parent how to swaddle bath. And we're saying, no, that's not what we're doing. We're trying to help you understand it's about consistent languaging, consistent messaging that our parents will hear from one hospital to another hospital, but also commonly between one hospital. Everybody doesn't use the same language. And I guess the thing that helped us to make sure that as a parent learns something in one hospital, they get repatted or moved to another service, either for escalation of care or going back to their home unit. It's how they don't have to repeat that, go through all of that again in another hospital in a slightly different way. And this is how we manage that. So we've got something called our, obviously a passport. It's familiar to lots of us, but this is uniform across the whole of the Northwest. People can't take things out of this passport. There's things around competency for tube feeding, etc. They can add to. So we've got evidence of some hospitals adding things like the parent journal. So that's something that they can add into, but they can't take away. They can only build on what's already there. So now we know what good looks like. How do we make sure it happens consistently across the Northwest? Well, that's our journey where we're up to now. As you've just heard from the amazing Chester, they have gone through our accreditation process earlier last month actually in November. And we're doing this by measuring certain elements and all against here, the things that you can see on this screen here to make sure that approach is consistent. It's a real offer. We really do want to make sure that it's not a tick box exercise, but that parents really tangibly feel that they're having an offer of family integrated care in their unit. And it's clear that the things on this checklist are what we believe will help support that. So 2022 is a huge year for us for family integrated care in the Northwest. We're aiming to get all of our 22 neonatal units through FICare accreditation this year. Every neonatal unit has got a date set and they've got their action plans in. and we've got a series of assessments all started the process as they give towards evidence of achieving against the measures we've done, and we'll go in onto the unit with an assessment team, which is a nurse, a medic, an AHP and some parents, to review their evidence remotely to start with, and on the day do the walk, get a feel of what family integrated care feels like. Does it feel like a real valuable offer to the families every time across the patch? And then they'll get work towards accreditation for our stage 1 FICare. And as you can see here, this is the I've forgotten what he called it now, the coffee area where families all come together, and it was a great space. This screen behind here, you can watch videos on it. We're all going for the next World Cup that's on and all going to join in with the parents and watch there. So this is across at Chester. So now I'll hand over to Sarah.
So yeah, so what's next for us in the Northwest? So obviously we've got the care coordinator team. I started in September, and then we are lucky that we've got 2 coming to us in next week. Actually, we've got Joe from Chester. He's coming to join the team, and that hopefully the team will support our stage 2, which again is working with the allied health professionals to look at enhancing parent and staff understanding around neurodevelopment and further improving our long-term outcomes. And along with the NHS long-term plan, looking at the first 1,001 days of a child's life and beyond, because that's what we hear from families, that it's not just about being on a neonatal unit, it's that transition to home and then they're up to school life. So it's really important that as a neonatal team, we support that family, that it isn't just their journey starts on a neonatal unit. And then obviously further staff education on supporting families to understand their baby's development, their baby cues, and that really important parent-infant relationship. And then we're going to look at research. So what do we need to collect to evidence the impact? Look at the neonatal unit stay for the baby, for the parent, and for the staff. Again, what are the long-term outcomes? And then around the health economics benefits. So a report's come out quite recently around the child in the north and about the difference between a child's life in the north to the rest of the country. So having that huge impact of austerity, how does that influence our families and how can we support them, and how can FICare take this beyond? And again, like Nadia, love that quote from Mayor Angelo around I did then what I knew how to do, know that I know better and I will do better. So great quote there, Nadia, agree with you. And then just so we could take a bit of ownership within the network, we just did a definition of what it means to FICare means to us in the Northwest, and we had our own logo of the 3 birds. And when you go to Chester, that is throughout the unit in Chester is the 3 birds. It's great to see. And thank you. That's from me and Karen. Any questions? I'm sure we'll take some at the end, but thank you for listening.
Thank you both. That was absolutely wonderful. We've talked about not reinventing the wheel and sharing resources, and I think we'll be coming to you for a job lot of resources. Those were fantastic and a wonderful example of how to make a network really function well. It was brilliant. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us rapidly on, but thank you both so much. And actually this fits in really very nicely again, because we're going to hear from Kelly Fizaklia, who's from the Cambridge and Peterborough CCG. Now, Kelly is a previous neonatal parent and is also the vice chair of the Rosie Maternity and Neonatal Voices. And she's going to be talking about really working in partnership with families. Thank you, Kelly.
Hello, my name's Kelly Fizakli and I'm the Vice Chair at Rosie Maternity and Neonatal Voices, and I lead on the Rosie Neonatal Voices work. I'm a previous neonatal parent myself, with my daughter spending 3.5 months in the Cambridge Neonatal Intensive Care Unit in 2018. So what is Rosie Neonatal Voices? As I said, we are part of Rosie Maternity and Neonatal Voices, and we was established in September 2020. We're an independent, multidisciplinary working group led by neonatal service users. We provide a feedback mechanism for neonatal service users, and we ensure that there is service user involvement in co-production and service improvement within the neonatal setting. What do? We gather service user feedback, we co-produce service improvements and listen to all voices, even when they're a whisper, and this is especially important as many neonatal families are vulnerable. We keep the focus on service users. We share praise with staff, which of course has been extremely important over the past year or two to try and boost their morale. And we constructively challenge, so we're there as a critical friend to the team. So who is involved at Rosie Neonatal Voices? There's myself, so there's one leadership post, and I am paid 1 day a week for my work. We have many followers now on Facebook, and we've had over 150 detailed survey responses, which is going up day by day. We have a closed WhatsApp group for neonatal service user representative volunteers, and then we have service users attend each quarterly meeting alongside their various members of staff. So looking back at our first year, we wanted to see what we've achieved so far. So we've listened to neonatal service users, and this has been via a general neonatal survey, plus additional themed surveys, such as feeding support, antenatal information. But with these surveys, because we are maternity and neonatal voices, we can focus on the family's whole journey. So how they received that support whilst they was on the maternity side and also whilst they was in neonatal care. We have a public Facebook page and also a closed feedback group, which itself has over 100 members now. We host virtual listening events specifically for neonatal families, and this allows them the opportunity to feedback about their care or on specific items. And then we host quarterly neonatal meetings in addition to our maternity voices meetings. We've ensured that there's service user co-production, and this is in a variety of things, including our work plan. So our work plan was put together directly from service user feedback, so we knew what to prioritise and where we could improve the care and support provided. A NICU wellbeing booklet. This was especially important during COVID and when the really tight restrictions were in place, how we could support families to support themselves as well. A parent neonatal unit booklet, a website redesign that we are currently involved with. Also research projects to ensure that service users are involved in the research design. SCABU rooming in document, so giving parents information. An LMNS-wide neonatal leaflet, so a general leaflet, which could be used by those in either the level 1, 2 or 3 neonatal units. And the Rosie preterm bundle, making sure that all the information is there that service users would like, and also that it's in a service user friendly language and easy to understand. We have our own board on NICU so that parents are aware of who we are and how to contact us. We've been asked to share our success at the National Maternity and Neonatal Summit. We've been involved in trying to increase the parent accommodation, especially when it's reduced throughout COVID. The team was very willing to be involved with producing some videos for Kangaroo Care Awareness Day, and at September they'd already had over 700 views, which is brilliant. We've been involved in creating the information for parent-led ward rounds and ensuring it has everything that will support them with this. We've shared updates, which was especially important regarding COVID restrictions and when these were changing, Create and a virtual tour, which is again vital, and then also Bliss accreditation. We've hosted Facebook Live sessions with members of the NICU team, including the family support team, so psychologists and counsellors who can offer a question and answer session. and also with speech and language therapists about their role and how they support families and babies on the unit. We've shared parent stories on the unit and across our social media. One of the areas highlighted with antenatal information was that many of the parents at the tertiary centre was aware that their baby may need to be admitted to neonatal care. So with this, at one of our meetings with service users and neonatal staff members, we decided that a good idea for this would be to add the web page link for neonatal services to all fetal medicine and preterm birth surveillance clinic reports. This would allow parents to be able to access this information during the antenatal period. In another one of our surveys, listening events and quarterly meetings, when we was discussing feeding support for parents, it was reported quite often that neonatal parents on the postnatal wards would take so much time and effort to express that milk, and especially in the early days. And then they would find that their milk wasn't being transported to the neonatal unit. And when they went onto the unit, their baby had unfortunately had to be given formula milk because there was no express milk available. So one of the sort of easy suggestions that we had regarding this was to add a tray into the postnatal ward fridge, which was coloured, so that when the midwifery staff opened the fridge, they could immediately see that there was milk that needed to be transported to NICU, and then to try and access someone who could support them with transporting that. We've also looked at the staff role descriptions and uniforms, as we know there is vast amount of staff on the unit. We've celebrated many awareness events, as you can see from here. So this includes highlighting important topics such as World Sepsis Day, Safer Sleep Week, but then it's also celebrating the really special events such as World Prematurity Day, NICU Staff Appreciation Day, which was a huge one that we really tried to celebrate this year, and also NICU Remembrance Day and Mental Health Awareness Week. So looking forward to the year ahead, we're currently in the process for myself to gain an honorary contract and DBS so that I'll be able to access the unit. So parents will be able to provide their feedback to me whilst they're present on the unit. Obviously this will be their choice, but it just gives them the opportunity to speak to a previous parent. To continue to raise awareness of Rosie neonatal voices, to support the development of family integrated care and working alongside the new neonatal care coordinators, to increase the awareness of the family support team and how to access them and the importance of accessing them, and to enhance the understanding of machines, monitors and alarms, which is a very common cause of anxiety for neonatal families. We are very fortunate at Rosie Neonatal Voices to have such a positive working relationship with the neonatal team, and it's from them and us, it's shown a huge difference of involving service users in co-production and improving neonatal services.
Thank you very much, Kelly. That was a really lovely example of the importance of listening to and really hearing the family voice. I love the bit about hearing the whisper. I think that's something that we all struggle to do effectively, and that's a lovely way of putting it. Thank you very much. So our last presentation today is from Oliver Rackham. I'm not sure I'm going to say this properly, but he's from the Glan Clwyd Hospital in Wales, and he's going to talk about family integrated care in general, but also the use of the multidisciplinary allied health professional team as far as delivering FICare. So thank you very much, Oliver, and I apologise if I said that wrongly.
Hello, I'm Angela Hannah. I know we're under Oliver's name. He's our consultant. So I'm the lead nurse for FICare on the unit in Glan Clwyd, and we've just got a short presentation with Ellen and Fiona about how we do developmental care ward rounds. So are we able to skip a slide, Ellen? Is it me?
Sorry.
There we go. So I was just going to describe in this first slide how they look on our unit. So they are informal cot-side meetups with parents. We try and meet them on a weekly basis. We also, it's a very informal sort of chat about developmental care. Parents really do appreciate it. The people that are involved is usually myself as the lead nurse. We always have our AHPs with us as well, speech and language and physio. And at any one time, we'd always try and have at least 2 of us in that conversation. And they sort of are facilitated discussions around really what the parents' observations are of their own baby, their reflections, and that sort of includes their stop signs and also their readiness cues and how they want nursing staff in their absence to approach their baby. And Phil just talk about how we record that and for consistency. And we include professional coaching. It's actually a big part of how we deliver parent education on the unit when sort of organised, like timetabled sessions aren't really happening at the moment. And also to say it's not a compulsory thing. Obviously parents do opt in, but on the whole parents do really value it and prefer to have that discussion aside from the medical ward round. So yeah, I think I'm going to move on to Fee now for the next slide.
So these are the cards that we use, and they're written from the baby's perspective. We put the baby's name at the top. Following feedback from parents, we originally put the parent's name that we were having the discussion with, but parents said that they like to have both parents' names often in, so we ask now which names they would like recorded as down for the parents' names. We had tried parent education sessions in parent coffee area and then cot side, and we'd visited units where developmental care rounds were more general advice based on the gestational age of the baby. But we found that by running these individualised sessions, they've been most successful for our unit. And reflecting really on how many parents learn by being or seeing rather than hearing. And so we're able to tie in theory with practice. So if we're talking about dim light, we're actually able to set the cot side environment correctly for that baby's gestational age and have a discussion with the parent about how that feels and why it might be appropriate for the baby at that stage. On the cards, we always use the words that the parents use, and parents are very specific about the words that they choose. So the first card that we use, the first question is, what's important to me? And that's with the focus on things that will happen during the upcoming week. And it brings up a variety of topics that we expand on, looking through the family integrated care folder. And we've just updated 2 of the chapters with parent feedback, which we're really pleased with. So if a parent uses the word cuddle, if what's important to their baby they think is their baby experiencing cuddles, that's what we write on the card. Our discussions might go on to embrace skin to skin, and invariably we'll discuss how that might support bonding for the baby, encourages lactation, supports milk expression, breastfeeding, or how it supports development or stability. The discussion can cover all sorts of things, but the words that we record reflect what the parents have felt is important. So the discussion is tailored to the parent's interest, and the parents then decide what's most relevant for their baby and what they would then like recorded on the card under what helps. The parents often bring up wider family concerns. So the developmental care ward round has become a vehicle for psychosocial support, especially during COVID. Perhaps thinking of ways a brother or sister might be involved in the little baby's care. Choosing a story for parents to read to the baby, and then having staff members film this for the parents to share with the family at home. So the card has meant that the whole team are able to see what is important to that family for that week. In the second card, we changed it to My Strengths Are, and this was developed to really help parents focus on their baby's progress and to help them feel confident about taking their baby home. It still gives space for them to be aware of the way that they can support their baby's developmental progress. Here's an example of one of the cards. The feedback from the parents has encouraged us that a key theme is for everybody to know their baby, and from that to record the uniqueness of their baby's readiness cues, their stop signs, especially if these are subtle, and how their baby is best comforted. Parent competencies are signed off in their baby's passports in the family integrated care file by members of staff throughout or during each week. But during the developmental care ward rounds, it's an opportunity for parents to reflect on their confidence in participating in different aspects of their baby's care and sharing the areas that they would like further support. Ellen, and the therapeutic model. So we like the discussions to be strength-based and looking at solutions and following the developmental principles. And we're always looking to support secure attachment.
We'll conclude just by considering the parent's voice in response to our developmental care ward rounds. So we try and obtain both informal and formal feedback from our families, and we use that to shape our ongoing practice. And the feedback includes these comments from parents' own experiences. So I think it's great, it's very relaxed and informative. Everyone has been very different and progressive. It was nice to talk about his strengths. It was one of my favourite times all week. I learned to help his development by observing his behaviour and how I can recognise his signs. And it's from such comments as these really that we deem our developmental care ward rounds a really central element of our FICare practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, that just reflects the importance, I think, of having the entire neonatal team, multidisciplinary team, all engaged and involved and delivering wonderful FICare. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we've rather run over in terms of our timing, and we're pretty much close to the end of the session. I think it reflects, I'm sure you will all agree with me, it reflects the absolutely brilliant quality of the presentations that we've just listened to. They are totally inspiring, and as I said earlier, they're just a sample of the the examples that we received, all of which were wonderful. And at a time that the NHS is getting quite a lot of bad press, FICare seems to be a beacon of light and full of enthusiasm, and is a totally inspiring area of care to be involved in. I suspect that we probably really haven't got time for any meaningful questions. I might just ask my working group co-members who are on this meeting, Anniko and Neil, if they have anything to say, or if there's been anything that's come up in the chat.
Let them out, listening to the documentary.
Thanks very much, Judith. Just to say, my name is Neil Patel, I'm a colleague of Judith, and I was involved in the framework as well. I just think it's been a totally inspiring session, actually, hearing from everybody who is working on this throughout the country. And I think that what I reflect on is actually how far we have come so quickly, actually, in terms of embedding family integrated care in practice across the country. And hopefully the framework is just one of the steps along the way for us to continue to do that. I've learned huge amount today, taking away so many great ideas. It's great to see lots of familiar faces as well and hear about the great work they're doing. So yeah, just really reflecting on how far people have come, and hopefully maintaining that momentum and the framework helping that.
Anniko, do you have anything extra to say? I think we should probably call it a day, because we have officially come to 3 o'clock, and as I say, I am aware of the pressures that neonatal services really throughout the UK are under at the moment. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you so much for those who presented and everybody else who put forward abstracts of what they're currently doing. Kate Dinwiddie is going to happily host those on the BAPM website, so that they will be a resource that's available to anybody who's interested in accessing them. And as Anniko said earlier on, I think, share, don't reinvent the wheel. There's so many examples of good, excellent practice out there that I think we should all be learning from each other and pushing forward. Thank you very much. I think we'll call it a day there, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.